welcome again to our podcast, Tap Voices. And we're lucky that with the guests that are able to come and talk with us. And today in person, we're very lucky we have Emil Atanassov. And Emil is currently the VP of Internationalization and Accessibility Engineering at ServiceNow. We have the lovely Bruno Herrmann, and Bruno is one of the leading voices in the language management industry, and Bruno works with organisations of all sizes, and his clients are invariably expanding digitally, and he engages with them when they're growing globally at scale. I'm Paula McGrath. I own and I run International Achievers Group, and we are a solutions-focused recruitment partner, and our way of working is predominantly client focus, so it's candidates and clients' needs first and foremost. So let's get started. And Emil, let's start talking about you. I noticed that you come from a professional background working in the computer software industry. So are you comfortable to tell us a bit how you started there and ended up in ServiceNow with such an interesting job?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So essentially my path, as many other paths, is probably one of a few twists and turns, but I actually studied history, American history, to make it even better. And I went to university in the US. Mm-hmm. And at one point or another, I genuinely thought I will be a college professor. That was my thing. It was between that and maybe coffee shops that sells vintage bicycles. Those were my two career choices 20 years ago.
That's quite a span.
As life has it, those didn't materialize yet. So I started. So how did I get into the internationalization / localization industry? I had an interview at a historical society in the state of Minnesota. And on the way back, as I was going towards my flat, somebody contacted me and said, "Hey, there's this company and they need people that speak other languages, and you want to just stop by and say hi." So I said, "All right." I stopped by. I was still wearing the suit from the other interview. I had the same CV, like those are the good old days when you bought nice paper to print out the CV, and it was expensive paper, so I kept it. I stopped by, and it was a company called Sagen, and Sagen at that point had won a contract with a large American corporation called Best Buy. And they were expanding into Puerto Rico. Best Buy were doing a whole bunch of other stuff. They bought our Carphone warehouse here in EMEA. So they were going through some expansion, and the expansion was far from trivial. It included things in relation to training. It included things in relation to signage in the stores. Mm-hmm. I didn't speak Spanish. I still don't. But essentially, they were like, "Hey, we need somebody that can help with the coordinating these localization tasks." It sounded interesting. So at that point, I think I don't know if you guys are familiar, but in the US, once you complete your degree, you get a year visa. It's called optional practical training. Yep. So you get that year visa and you can get a job. And I did that. And then with the same company, I went on to live here in Ireland. I went on to set up some stuff in Singapore, so I was based there for a number of years. And so I left Sagen after 10 years, a little over 10 years being there. It was a great learning opportunity. I got to do a lot of work in relation to software. I got to do a lot of work in relation to solutions consulting. So I dealt with the more technical background of all those pieces. Early 2017, myself and my now wife decided to take sabbaticals. We took sabbaticals for 10 months, which at that point we were told it's a mistake, don't do it. It's a career suicide, etc. But we did it, and we traveled 4 continents. I forget, 16, 20 countries, something of that nature. Mm-hmm. We got back. I had a very short gig for the European Union. I decided that's not the gig I wanted. Yeah. ServiceNow approached me and said, "Hey, we have a job." This is the thing. I went through, obviously, a vigorous interview process, as most of the tech companies would have that. I got the offer, and the offer was like, "You need to move to Ireland." So 7 years ago, we packed and we moved to Ireland. So that's the story how I got into the ServiceNow job.
Wow. I'm just thinking about the randomness of even the start. I'm just thinking about if I was hiring somebody and this young man arrived in, well-dressed young man, I'm guessing by the suit and the CV, but you ended up in a role that I can't understand how the correlation from, our history of art graduate. No, have I got that right? American history.
American history, yeah.
I can't understand how an individual with the American history graduate with very little work experience ends up with such a key role in an expanding business. And I know you obviously went in at a junior position, but it was obviously a key position. It's interesting, isn't it? You obviously interview very well.
Or maybe the hiring manager felt generous that day. It's interesting because a lot of those localization production roles, historically, they were probably seen as less of a skill set. Localization as an industry has always had that piece where, hey, it's about extracting the content and then pushing that content through. There's a lot more to it. But you have, if you try to oversimplify it at a very basic level, those entry-level jobs, they ought to be something that everybody that has, especially a bilingual person, don't forget that was in small town in Wisconsin/Minnesota. So a bilingual person suddenly is a unique interest and a unique opportunity for the company. So I think the degree was irrelevant. I still don't know what I would use it for, but I definitely still mostly watch the History Channel and read history books. So that's part of who I am and what I enjoy to do. Since then, obviously, I've had to upskill a number of times. Just to be clear, that journey hasn't been just wake up and do this, but it was a great foundation, and I'm forever thankful to that hiring manager that essentially took a chance. But also think about it. That showcases that sometimes the people that you hire might not have the education background or the experience background, but might have the mindset to be successful. And that's a very hard one. It's hard to measure, hard to predict.
It's also a hard sell. I'll tell you that as a recruiter, because even when I look back, my first career, I was going to be a partner in a firm of accountants. So when we were looking to hire staff, and I worked in both Ireland and UK, and when we were looking to hire staff, we really weren't at all. Now, I'm in my 60s, this is an awful long time ago. We didn't matter to us at that time what the degree was. You had to have some level of further education, and in a way it was more to show commitment of the ability to stick at something, to see it through. You also, I won't pretend you didn't have to show a certain academic ability, but it was more about showing that you stuck at something. But we used to hire people who had a marine biology degree. I mean, they had the most interesting degrees in the world. I come from a very traditional background, so my parents were too scared to allow their children to do anything other than the traditional route. But there's a massive difference compared to hiring today. So it's not fascinating. It can be quite frustrating at times when the hiring people, they're first of all largely hiring in their own likeness. And secondly, they have one script and it has to fit the script. And sometimes we meet people and it would take no effort at all for them to switch. So their skills are transferable. Their experience is transferable. But most organisations nowadays, they're accountable to their investors, they're accountable to their other stakeholders, and there's no wriggle room at all. I've seen that shift in 40 years.
Not to dwell on that one too much, but I'm seeing a slightly different thing at ServiceNow specifically, where we actually use in-house teams. Our talent acquisition, our pipeline building, actually it's ran out of here in Ireland, a lot of those functions. And the people that we have that are building the pipeline, they bring a lot of different perspectives. They're people from many different backgrounds. So they're able to build a very good pipeline for us. Then our talent acquisition team is also the same. One of the things that we figured out very early on in ServiceNow probably, and it wasn't like me, it was somebody a lot smarter and somebody a lot better than this stuff in the talent acquisition team, was essentially if you hire great people, they have a whole bunch of great referrals. And if you mix and match those with a healthy pipeline, and if you do a great talent acquisition team, I think that's public information, or most of it definitely is public information, but our undesirable attrition is tiny compared to most software companies out there. So that piece works. We've also are fortunate enough to be a global company. So when you have many offices, many options, you can build that piece. But yeah, I think the way people think about the transferable skill set has also changed. So I've been doing internationalization/localization for 18, 19 years almost now. So let's round it up to 20. And the skill set is changing. The expectations are changing. We used to overcomplicate stuff. Now it's the other trend. Now it's like, hey, let's simplify the message. Can you tell me what is this in, I don't know, 4 sentences? Or, so that's also changing.
Yeah. And well, you mentioned you studied history, and it's really interesting because I know some people who have been as long as I am in the localization or globalization community, not just industry as a supplier, and who studied law, sociology, so other matters, other topics that are not directly related to the globalization or the localization community. And I think that's, as you said, it's all about, I mean, also in my own experience as a hiring manager in my previous job, I was looking also for people who could transfer their skills, their competencies or their experience to something new. So not just this type of, okay, this person has a degree in, let's say, business administration, but people who could also do and use what they've done before in their job they were applying for. I think that's a very important point. So and I think what you said about transferable competencies and I would say the attitude to actually leverage what you have done and what you can bring to an organization, the value as a human person, it's very interesting now in this age of AI or generative AI, because what people, and you can disagree with me, but let me know, but I think that recruiters or hiring managers are looking for people not just having a strong background, but who can actually adapt to new skill sets, new tool sets, and you mentioned the word mindsets. And I think these 3 things are really important. They've been always important, but now with generative AI, there is so much work going on that you cannot just hire only people with a data science background. You need more people to join, the Gen AI age and say, yes, I can have a role in generative AI or with generative AI, and I have a background in law, for instance, or in other matters. And I think, skill sets, tool sets, and mindsets have to go together. Not sure what you think about that.
Our CEO has a saying that there is no artificial intelligence without human intelligence.
Yeah.
So I will take that as kind of the starting point. It's a very fascinating time in terms of what's next. We all have to figure out a lot of things, and things are shifting and things are changing. I'm seeing some interesting and some very, very unusual use cases in relation to artificial intelligence that we are seeing. ServiceNow has been one of the companies that we have a lot of successful deployments. We have lots of customers that are utilizing the artificial intelligence that we have and the generative artificial intelligence that we have within our platform. We also are starting to do a lot of stuff with agentic AI. That meets a different type of persona. So we were pretty forward thinking, because I think 2018, 2019, we bought a company out of Canada that was one of the leaders in generative AI at that point. And that company essentially had their own models. We deploy our own models. We are pretty confident in what those models cover. So we went for smaller models. They're vertical specific. They solve actual cases. But the amount of extra use cases that I'm seeing that we didn't even think exists, and the skill set to even think about those, imagine them, because we can build a lot of stuff. As engineers, we tend to overcomplicate stuff in some cases. We love to build new stuff. You want to build exciting things. You love to be the,
leader.
I also deal with accessibility engineering. And let me tell you, I go to an engineer, I'm like, can you fix your accessibility bug? They're like, no, I want to do something new, cool, exciting. I want to fix that bug, but you have to. It's part of the job. And what I'm seeing is that in a lot of cases, when you develop those new pieces of technology, you just get so in the middle of it that you forget to define what great looks like or what the customer would get out of it, and
Yeah.
what's the customer success story here, folks. Like let's talk about that. We have teams that deal with that, customer deployments. We get in conversations, but let me share a very specific example, recent example. ServiceNow, you can use ServiceNow to essentially automate some of your ticketing.
Yeah.
That's one of the many use cases. And if you have a global IT support organization, so let's say Bruno and I, we are in support, and he writes his comments in French, and I write my comment in, I don't know, Greek. And then we want to summarize those because that would be a great learning. What we are solving as a problem, you might get tomorrow, so we want to summarize it for you. Well, by using some of the native capabilities of those generative AI models, actually it summarizes languages, and it gives you, so it takes his comments, my comments, localizes it, and the summarization is now available in a common language that you choose to use. Historically, we had to build a whole bunch of widgets. You have an API machine translation through there. You have to get a legal approval to get that to be hosted in your own data center. And now suddenly I have a knowledge base generated based out of languages from a whole bunch of folks that don't even speak the same language.
Yeah.
And it's consumed by someone else.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there. Are all your use cases that you're referring to, are they all coming from internal experiences, or are you seeing anything?
No, this specifically was built with something else in mind, but when the customer started using it in this fashion, it worked.
Okay. Isn't that wonderful? That's the advantage of having such a broad base.
Yeah, and we were very fortunate to have pretty large deployments. We also have pretty significant global deployments. So in terms of ServiceNow customers, about 10,000 enterprise level customers. So you can basically a lot of the big companies, and by the nature of those companies, they tend to operate across geographies.
That's right, yeah.
So our global deployment is very healthy. A lot of companies operate in multiple languages, and essentially they want the same efficiency regardless of language. Like my team's motto, like what we strive to achieve, what's like the one sentence that we go after is essentially we want the user experience in other than English to match the English one.
Yeah.
And the other piece that I always tell people is we develop in English. We develop in one language. Most software companies, or most companies do, but we release in 24 languages. Like it's a development piece. So those are the two. Like if somebody asks me internally, hey, what is internationalization? That's kind of how I position it. So we had the base. We had our own LLMs. We then had a whole bunch of technology solutions that we built to be the control tower for other LLMs. Because ServiceNow is a system of action, we also had that benefit. But skill sets like summarization, KB generation, those were things that we had very early on. And they were very, they show a good return of investment.
And how many of you are in the language management side of the business? And how many people are in the organization in total?
It's a good question. So between internationalization and accessibility engineering, we have 65 people internally. We also have separate marketing localization team. We have a couple other smaller subsets within training and so on. So within my side, which is the engineering side, it's about 65 of us. The actual localization managers, they're production managers, they're actually only 4 or 5. So we're able to do a lot of work at scale.
Yeah.
We have our own development team, so we develop internal tooling. So all of our developers actually do use that tooling. The tooling that we develop as a team, the tooling is done in things like, extraction of code. We also have a verification at code commit. And at that point, we are a merge blocker. So what that means is if you have code issues that would produce an internationalization error, you cannot merge your code. So that is at that scale, we're one of the very. I'm aware of only one other company that has it, and
I don't come from that engineering background, but it sounds so obvious. Now I'm not. I have no clue how easy it is
It's not
to
easy.
implement. Obviously not.
one of the
It's probably
hardest
very
things to
expensive, but it actually sounds so obvious. It's like it's a very obvious thing to do. Why don't people do that?
Paula, it's the hardest. I'll tell you, if I have one advice, whenever you go into a company, find out if internationalization is part of the software definition of done.
Yes, yeah.
And if it is not, change it. That is my one tip. It's not an easy thing to do because it's a lot of work for a lot of people. We
Okay.
have 9,000 developers that now have to meet our expectations of what good looks like.
Yeah.
And your role is really interesting in many ways, but from my perspective, it reminds me my own challenges in multinationals as well, not in the IT industry, but in the life science and the BI industry. When I had to tell people that I was not a localization leader, I was a globalization leader. And globalization was covering not just, and just is a soft word, localization, but localization was one step in the whole supply chain. Or the value chain, if you consider the value chain, and I think your role in, for instance, in internationalization, is a great example of why localization people should be more integrated, if they are not, or more celebrated sometimes in the language management space. But the language management doesn't start with localization; it starts with, source content, source code, and this is why it's so important to consider, in my opinion, localization or language management in global product operations or in global content operations. Whatever you deliver, you might deliver a product which is digital or physical, but as every company has at least one supply chain to produce a product, at least one product. And I think that, when you are in charge indeed of internationalization and engineering, it's the evidence that language management is much broader than what some people consider as the localization industry, which is putting some content in different languages. So I think that's probably a best way to highlight the value of language management, which is not only for localization, but which is upstream in your case.
Absolutely. And I think if we have to be intellectually honest, like localization in many cases is probably not the hardest thing to do by itself. But building the processes around it, we have also internal quality engineering, internal to our team quality engineers, and they could be specific to a language, they could be specific to a subject matter, they could be specific to actually managing the vendors that do the testing. But one of the things very early on that like probably 6 years ago, with my colleagues, we sat down and we discussed was how do we take, instead of just running localization test cases, for example, how do we take functional test cases and expose as much content as possible and then have a metrics and a number that is really meaningful? That's even shifting. Now it's changing because you have AI search, you have generative AI, you have these experiences. So now we're talking about experience layer, and that experience layer, your Japanese experience ought to be the same efficiency as the English one. And you have to do it from a customer perspective. You can't do it from the localization perspective is like, let's fix these 3 words and make it better. That's irrelevant. It's how useful it is. Are you able to, is it the same, is it transferable knowledge? So if I use one of the products, is there consistency across the different products, how effortless it is, etc. There's this number of things that we're considering, but it's usability. Let's call it what it is. How usable is your product in German? I don't know.
And
3 commas don't make much of a difference.
It's an important point to make to some suppliers, not all of them, some LSPs, to tell them or to remind them that localized content, it can be 5, 10, 15 languages, is creating value only within the framework of something bigger, which is called product management, content management, engineering. It doesn't create value just because it's in French or in German. It creates value because the French or the German will be integrated into the value chain that ends up with the delivery in multiple markets. But it has to be considered and most of all managed in the framework of indeed a supply chain or a value chain. Otherwise, to your point, it becomes quite irrelevant specifically for some people who are not fully understanding language management, they say, yeah, okay, it has to be in French and German, but so what? They don't understand where the value. And they say they will, and these are the people who usually say, "Oh, localization. It's expensive. It is slow." These are the people criticizing localization because they don't see the value.
Yeah, but the same people are not only criticising localisation. I'm just smiling to myself about the discussions. I've sat around tables now, more so in my previous profession than my current one, but where where the investors and the head of finance people are arguing non-stop about materiality. And so your comment about the Japanese experience it's great. You're aiming for it to be the same as the German person's experience, but it's the financing of that. Not every organisation gets the financial backing and the comfort to have the freedom to put the time in to do that, to hire the specialist to do that. So, and so honestly, you wouldn't believe the number of conversations I've listened to around materiality, so the materiality and then measuring it as a part of return on investment. And that's a very, very cruel conversation that engineers never get to hear.
Yeah.
Fair. And also, if you have to put it in the ServiceNow perspective, we've been so fortunate with the growth, with the expansions we had. So we've been on the right side of this whole story. We've been fortunate to be there. But I'll tell you something else. Recently, I had an interesting conversation in relation to something very similar. There's now a whole industry out there it's fractional, like CEO, CFO,
Right.
and I met with somebody who used to do something very similar to what I do for a large bank in the US. And now what they do is they do essentially a couple of days a week or a few days a month where they work with these companies and they talk about the value realization or they talk about the market usage. Because even on the engineering side, my organization still runs localization. So I still look at usage every month. I can tell you how many active users, use our platform in German. I literally had that conversation today. I can tell you all the languages. I look at, okay, if we've had a drop, is that drop to a specific customer? What's the drop there? So I can go to that granular level because essentially, we are fortunate to have it built within the system. Telemetry is there, but we also have language preferences, etc. We also can see things like, hey, if I invest in localizing product documentation, is suddenly my training pass rates increasing because people are searching and saying, hey, I want to know what ServiceNow's, the HR, the employee workflow solution is. Oh, okay, I'm going to go read the docs. So I can see the uplifts in docs. The moment we do, let's pick Japan again. So the moment we're actually localizing the content faster, maybe it's for us, a lot of it is human translation. Okay, maybe now the people that are getting recertified on ServiceNow, not just the partners and implementers, but other users, that percentage goes up. Oh, they're now within the ecosystem. They are now people that are involved. So we look into usage, we look into attrition on customer level. If a customer has turned off Hungarian, oh my gosh, let's go talk to that customer. And the other benefit I have is I have a group of 5 people, which are the global deployment specialists. So when we do global deployments, they actually tell customers, here's how you self-localize, here's how you customize, here's how you configure it. We have a brilliant gentleman by the name of Alex Coop, who came from not the localization or globalization industry, but he came from the ServiceNow ecosystem. So he was somebody that had implemented ServiceNow.
Okay.
Globalization was one of the challenges he had. So he got super keen on it. And now he gets to tell every customer how he dealt. And he reaches, his impact is hundreds of customers. But if a customer comes and says, hey, I bought ServiceNow and I'm going to have to localize my KBs because I want my French office to get the same experience. Oh, customer, let me tell you how to do it. Here's the connector. Here's this. Here's that. We have that playbook and that muscle. And traditionally, that doesn't sit with engineering, but we are the subject matter experts. So if they have feedback, we want that feedback to come to us and doesn't go to support or the account escalation. So that's why we build that. So we are, I hate to say it, but we're like a small business unit within engineering business unit. And those are like, look, 20 years ago or 18, 19 years ago, when I got that first job, I didn't think I'll have that idea of closing the cycle and getting all the feedback and having the expertise. But within a few months on the job, I had a customer present all these issues, like how tough it was to deploy ServiceNow in other languages. And actually, it was written by the implementation partner. And we went, found the implementation partner, and we said, hey, all the complaints you had, come over. You want to fix them? So 6 years now on, and that's the approach. Customer-centric. Always listen to the customer. If the customer, like we all have defense mechanism to be like, well, but the customer doesn't understand. Well, if they don't understand, fix it. But that's been since day one. It's been, we're customer obsessed. We get all the data. And our challenge is we have the internal customers that basically they're like, hey, you're blocking my merge. My boss is going to be very upset because I have to commit this code. And we're like, well, but you need to fix these 20 mistakes. And we have the external customers, which are like, hey, I want this to be perfect. And our platform is ginormous. Like in terms of content, etc., it's actually bigger than the Harry Potter books combined. This is a matter of fact, in terms of our content, we release 6 times a year, so it's good fun.
It's actually very smart because you were talking about this deployment manager. I think this person has indeed a very critical role.
Absolutely.
Because he's really acting or operating when delivery meets experience. Because that's where deployment is all about. It's actually creating experience. Otherwise, why do you deploy a product? And I think that this is where also you can not just capture, but measure the value of what has been done in language management way before. Your example about Hungarian is perfect, because you can say, oh yeah, you can always say that a customer doesn't know how to use it, but don't blame it on the customer. Look first into what you do to make sure that what you do is not actually, triggering something wrong at the end, because that's where usually there is a sort of challenge, I would say, when people say, oh yeah, we need to measure the impact or the value of language management, say translation, localization, etc. We need to measure that with the experience of the customer. Yes, of course. That's when you look at the end of the chain, what I call the end of the chain, which is the delivery part. But before that, and I have an example from my previous job, when, actually there was some sort of, not conflict, but there were some frictions between data scientists and language experts. Because data scientists said that they were doing the right thing, and language experts said that they were doing the right thing as well. And I said, well, let's, instead of talking to each other, against each other, let's try to work together. Because actually at the end, and I would like to hear your experience about that, specifically now with AI and generative AI, there is even a bigger incentive to actually make people who are data scientists or engineers work more closely, more effectively with people who are language experts. And I usually use the example of, human supervision in generative AI. Many people consider that human supervision is at the end, when the output is generated, that you need to ask a language expert to check if it's good or to correct and enrich the content. From my perspective, language expertise starts way before. When you create or when you acquire the language data that's going to train the model, when actually you are creating the prompts, because in the prompt, you need the language accuracy, you need the language effectiveness. Otherwise, your prompt will be generating some. So I would say that there are many reasons now, more than before, to actually have those, I would say, specialists who are engineers or data scientists work together with language experts, not at the end when the experience is already created, but way before, to make sure that everybody can bring his own experience. One which is a technical experience, the other one which is a language experience. You merge them, and then you, in my opinion, my experience, you are much more performant.
Yeah, there's definitely, I agree with your statement there. I think it's important to keep in mind first, there's traditionally when we first started looking, so to keep in mind, I guess the measurement is what I'm getting at. How do you define what you're even releasing, etc. in my work? And we all remember when last year or 2 years ago when we started just to look at completeness and hallucination of those large language models. One of the things that we did was we introduced the concept of language fluency into the same measurement. And we got quite early into the process of actually measuring. And so we, again, had internal models. We were comparing them. We also were learning about judge models at the same token because you have to have a level of automation there. We have a wonderful team of data scientists, but in addition to that, we had linguists and labelers that we actually were able to utilize. However, when the final sign-off was to be done, be like, hey, is this multilingual aspect to that specific solution there? We got involved in that. And we got involved in a number of items there. We got involved with assuring that the test data was properly localized. In some cases, we had native data. In other cases, we had to create some stuff. We also looked into the fluency piece that I measured. How do you even create that new metric? Because at C-level, they want to see how confident are you with the completeness or the hallucination. And suddenly you throw a third metric. And I remember one of the first meetings that was presented, people were like, this doesn't make sense. Like, like, what is this? And it's kind of, you stick to it and you keep on going. But quality of data, quality of the golden articles for some of those measurements, essentially making sure they're there, looking at the prompts. We struggled with some stuff initially. We thought we're going to take the prompts and then we're going to just translate them and it's just going to work. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to create those natively and all that stuff. So we went through that learning curve also. And I'm sure this is all going to change. But the one thing I'm really proud of what my team did is they stuck to the fluency piece. So we had a number of conversations in relation to language fluency, and that introduced a lot of interesting, loops of feedback in relation to the quality of the data. Because a lot of people, including ourselves, we always stated that your data is the most important piece. If your data is poor quality, none of this, whatever it generates, is not going to be good. And that was probably one of the main drivers for us to keep on going with fluency. We also have some interesting challenges for the internationalization / localization industry, I think, that came from that language quality, which is now how does a customer, how does anybody do localization at scale? Historically, let's say a customer deploys a platform, they have to translate few options, they have to maybe translate some of their KBs, their UI, so they can make it usable, whatever is not out of the box already, but whatever they've customized. But now, suddenly you need a lot of data within those environments to actually make generative AI work. So how can you bring enterprise level platform to have a consumer grade experience in relation to self-localization?
Yeah.
That's an interesting one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can I just ask a question there? You mentioned about the focus on fluency may change. Why?
Because right now, the customer expectations are that the content would be fluent. I think in future with agentic AI, when it's systems of action, they're going to probably, there's statistics behind it. There's a number of other things. So,
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there are some very interesting developments in language fluency or language effectiveness, I call it, in my world. Because you're right. I totally agree that it's going to change. It's already changing for me because, with agents, it's going to change and it's gradually changing already. But even beyond, I'm working with a company that is developing M2M content, machine to machine. So actually, human is not even involved because this is sort of course, legacy of robotic process automation, so RPA, where actually the simplest processes were totally automated without human intervention. And actually M2M content is very interesting because language fluency is great for M2M, where it would be very bad for H2H, human to human. And actually there will be a number of sort of in between levels, like, agents, or what type of agents will have different. So I see it as a very interesting area where, again, language expertise will be valuable with technical expertise.
Absolutely.
But also surely it must vary depending on the market that you're serving. So the regulated industries and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, well,
there has
if
to be.
you, oh yeah.
Sorry.
It also depends on the verticals.
That's,
So let's
that's
say
what
if
I
you
meant. Yeah,
go
the verticals.
manufacturing versus pharmaceutical versus telco versus banking. But the good thing about agentic AI is it's vertical built. So that's
Oh, yeah.
that's the benefit there. It's some there's some the improvements that we've seen in agentic AI just over the last 6 months is
Phenomenal.
impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and as I'm working mostly in the life science industry, I've not been surprised. I wasn't surprised 2 years ago, but I'm not even surprised now that a number of these companies, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, big or small, they are mostly moving away from LLMs just because it's very expensive and it's not always very effective. And they move to SLMs,
Yes.
specialized or small language models, where it's less expensive and it's going to be much more accurate. So it's, as you said, if you look month by month, you see the evolution. You don't have to wait next year. And you see that also, Paula, in the new roles, which are labeled AI language.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
something that you see a lot, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's actually interesting to look at our CRM and look at the different. You're right, the different roles that are actually advertised on that. Speaking of roles, if anybody wanted to, I know you wanted to work with an organisation such as ServiceNow, what are the key things? So if you're a candidate thinking, I actually honestly haven't even checked, but I'm assuming you guys are looking for loads of people. I know you've obviously an in-house hiring team, but if I was a candidate sitting out in whatever part of the world, what's the key 2 or 3 differentiators that make somebody suitable?
I can only speak about my team. It would be general statements there probably wouldn't be fair. But the answer is yes, we're looking for people. We are a company that actually keeps on hiring. Anecdotally, I'll tell you, I started in Ireland 7 years ago and I was employee number 3 here. And now we have 700. So the growth in Ireland specifically has been phenomenal. We just moved to a new office last year, March, right on Dawson Street in Nassau on the corner. And we have the top 4 floors and we are at capacity almost. So
Do you have to go into the office?
we are 2 days a week. I personally go 2 days a week. We basically are not at the moment, we're not going full time, but we're encouraging people 2 days a week. And it makes a difference. I'm a fan of the office, food disclosure. It makes a difference to have those in-person conversations. And you know what it makes the most difference for? It's early in career people. Because we love to hire early in career. We love interns. The first intern in Ireland for ServiceNow was actually on the internationalization team. And we are very good at converting those people, and those cooler talks and seeing what people do is spectacular. We have a lot of early in career here. And for that reason, I encourage people to go. Now, we also want to be accommodating to people that, daycare, etc., other stuff. Life happens. And there's a lot of life outside of work. So let's respect both. Going back to your question, what would be the top pieces of advice, if I might give? I probably focus on the interviews and the skill set there. One of the things that I always like to probe at to understand is I love people that bring new perspectives. Because if we just rely on the 65 people that we have and ask them the same questions and all that stuff, we probably get stuck on the same level. So one of the things that I always like to understand better is you bring a unique perspective. How would you go about communicating the changes that you want to see, regardless of the level of the role? That's one that I think people definitely should have an answer on. There's definitely skill set pieces that we are talking to. Ireland is an amazing opportunity for us to hire some phenomenal people because the education system is great. It also has things like masters in translation technologies.
That's
right. At the university here. I don't know if we can mention names, but anyways, there is such a thing here, and we hire people from there. So there's educational pieces. We have probably 15, 20 nationalities within the office, actually more than that, probably 30 nationalities within the team, 10 plus. So we like that part of our team that we hire people from all over. critical thinking.
Yeah.
So, hey, tell me how you're going to communicate this. Certain level of understanding, basic understanding, do your homework, figure out what exactly is ServiceNow, give us the one sentence answer if we ask you, figure out what is internationalization. It's different than localization. If you tell me it's localization, probably not going to be
hired.
sitting well.
Yeah.
And the other piece is I want people that are realistic in terms of, I don't want people that come to me and say, hey, I join you and like in 3 months, it's earth shattering, I'll change everything, I'll deliver. Be realistic. Like it's a gigantic platform, it's a gigantic company.
With a very
Be
successful
a
model.
maverick, yeah. Be a maverick, but don't be that maverick.
Yeah, I know.
And also, I think we discussed that at the beginning. Even the scale of service now has changed. Like we are 200 billion evaluation, like almost 11 billion revenue. And that's in 7 years. When I started, it was 1.5 billion. So even that skill set, like if you ask me back then what my top choice would have been like, hey, somebody that writes a good DoD definition of done, and also somebody that's, I don't know, like I want multilingual sorting to work in the platform, So I wish list changes. Yeah, I think intellectual honesty is good when you apply for jobs like that. Know what you know and what you don't know.
And also the open-hearted sounds a little bit woo-woo, but somebody with an open approach, an open mind, and you've actually identified it, I think, as intellectual honesty. But I think if you're sensible and open-minded, that has to help. But that helps in general, honestly, in careers. I know myself.
Yeah.
It definitely helps in life, but to be honest with you, sometimes I find, we may end up, even if we're not open-minded or open-hearted, we can still find maybe our partners, or we can still rear children successfully. But when it comes to, if you're ambitious and career-oriented and you want to get enjoyment and pleasure out of what you do, I think the open style helps, because it cuts out years and years of sitting around thinking you're the king or the queen.
Yeah,
I'm stating the obvious there, sorry.
No, that's true. Well, and Emil, you covered actually the mindset piece, which is very important. Of course, you can be the best expert in your area, but if you don't have the right mindset, it might be not very successful, because the mindset has to come together with the skill set and well, to some extent, at least for some roles, it's very important to, specifically in large organizations and multinationals like ServiceNow, there are some dynamics that you have to get used to, because obviously working in a multinational is not the same as working in a startup of 50 people. Very interestingly, you mentioned that you were number 3 in Ireland, which is quite interesting. You were, of course, part of a very small group in the beginning. So how did you personally make sure that you could, of course, if you could grow professionally in this company, moving from 3 people with now 700, you mentioned, right?
In Ireland.
In Ireland. Because it's quite, well, to say the least, it's quite a big change, not just in numbers, but also in terms of people interaction. You work with more people, with more functions, probably functions that were not existing when you joined. So how did you manage to, because you developed yourself in your area, but how did you also make sure that you could interact well, work well, but communicate well with other functions that are maybe far away from engineering, like, I don't know, legal, for instance?
I actually work very closely with legal and tax here. So I sit on the Irish board, and that kind of gives me that exposure to those folks. We had a pretty simple idea in the beginning. It was like, let's grow the office. So we represented the office. So I would go and have a lot of my peers are US based. Everybody I work on a daily basis, besides my direct team here, is US based. So you still have to do the trip once a quarter, twice a quarter. But then as part of those trips, we had a growth strategy for Ireland, and we'll go and talk to the different functions, and we'll be like, there's some great people to hire. It's a great office. It's a bit of fun. Come over here, etc., etc. And we were kind of the ambassadors of that office. Now, in terms of skill sets, you're right. The first 2 Christmases I wrote cards by hand to everybody in the office. The first year was like, I don't know, 10 cards. The second was 50, and then COVID happened. So we all went home, and then we got back to office that was too small. But very early on, we were pretty smart about some stuff we did horribly. Like we basically went and tried to bring every executive that you can talk to hire in Ireland. And obviously you have to have the proper levels, because you can't just hire one level. Then people are stuck in that level, then they leave. And some other things we did well, we basically explained how great Ireland was. We got a whole bunch of help to move teams here. So we grew both organically with transfers, but also hiring locally. I am also the UTG, which is the Unified Technology Group head for Ireland. So I have the unique kind of view of all the different technology sectors and groups. Our head for EMEA also sits here. It's usually somebody that comes from the US for 2 years, and we have a rotation cycle. So they bring an executive for 2 years. They kind of represent the whole EMEA region. And then we have the 5 biggest offices also have those. So we work closely. Storytelling. That's the skill set. You basically have to have an Irish story. And obviously for me, it's a bit strange because I'm not Irish. So having me being like the advertising face for Ireland, probably not a good thing, but I've taken on it.
I don't agree with that. No.
I don't know.
I've recruited for years. I personally don't recruit anymore, but I've recruited senior execs for years, and I think they were very, very sensible in their choice.
Yeah, so we did that, but
I think the combination of attitude and aptitude.
yes, exactly.
And I think, also listening to you speak, it does absolutely take somebody 2.5 seconds to realise I absolutely know next to nothing about engineering. I understand the desired outcomes, but that's as far as my skills goes in that area. But I think the advantage as well of having somebody that has the combination of commercial understanding as well as obviously a technical. I don't know whether you're deemed to be a brilliant or a genius person or not. I don't know, but you appear to have the combined skill set. So if an organisation is fortunate enough, what I have seen over the years, if an organisation is fortunate enough to attract individuals like that, to know what they need, to facilitate them, and the person, those people, and I think it's a rare number of people that have the capacity. And if you're able to fill that capacity for the individual, so if you're lucky enough for, I don't know how much luck, I think luck comes into everything we do in life. I think you can have the type of success stories for the individuals, for the organisation, for the team they hire, because they're now looking at leaders that they want to emulate.
My initial skill set was to deliver, because if you don't deliver the basics, you never get to do the things that you want to do after that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Build the foundation, build on top of that. I remember, some of the first things at ServiceNow was like, hey, let's even figure out how to localize docs, how to localize applications, build that muscle. I've been fortunate enough to work with some amazing people. But at the end of the day, that first thing is reputation. Be the person that solves problems without making too much noise. I've also been fortunate enough to be in a company and an organization that be the person without too much noise is a good value, because I've seen the others in peers and so on, where everybody tries to be the loudest and the most visible piece. And that usually lasts about 4 years based on what I have seen. And then in about 4 years, people are like, oh my gosh, that's toxic. Let's move on. So I think it's fascinating to build stuff. It's also fortunate because my skill set is to build up stuff. Like I've done it before in my previous job with, I was one of the first people they moved to Ireland, because I lived in Ireland one time before that in, I think, 2008. Etc. And then I went on to in Singapore, where I did the same. I built the office from scratch. So that's been the skill set that I've had. I'm sure there's a lot of other people that have the other skill sets to maybe maintain things at a certain level, or maybe to downsize, or maybe to reprioritize. But I've been fortunate not to deal with that. So I take it as, again, another blessing.
Yeah, and just to circle back on what you said, I think specifically when you start in a small team, or when you create a team yourself from scratch, which I was a number of times as well, I always said for myself and for my team, my first team members that I was recruiting, it's better to deliver quick wins than promise big wins. Because at the end, you're right, you need to make an impression, you need to make an impact. And of course, if you promise, yes, that's not the best way to make an impact. But if you deliver, even if these are small things, just doesn't have to be impressive, but people realize that, oh yeah, you joined or you grow your team and you deliver. There is something coming out of your practice or out of your team that will be much more impactful, in my opinion, than just promising, oh yeah, my team in 2 years will do this. It has to be. I always use the famous acronym SMART. I think the SMART attitude, SMART being specific, measurable. This famous acronym, which I love, because that's all about, for me, that's one of the keys to success. If you are indeed specific, measurable, attainable, etc. If you use those 5 adjectives, you are on the right track. And I think specifically when you grow team from scratch and when you create, because there is a big difference between joining a team that is already well established and building a team that has to prove everything, or nearly everything. It's not because you've been recruited. You might say, now I'm comfortable. I've been recruited. In my experience, if you are recruited to create teams from scratch, it's not going to be an easy journey and whatsoever. So recruitment is the first step, but then there is another one, which is starting to deliver. Yeah. It's and I'm really impressed that you were number 3. I realize now knowing the size of ServiceNow in Ireland, gosh, that must be a real contrast for you every day.
Yeah. Look, we have our funny stories in the office how
Gosh.
I joined, and one of the things that we did is we had, I think our CFO visited at the time, and he said, I don't like your coffee machine. So they actually they flew the guy that works workplace services from the UK to deliver the new coffee machine. And then he gives me an order list, and he says, okay, order the beers for Friday drinks. So I put the number of beers thinking it's beers, not cases. And we had 600 Coronas, which took us 2 years to drink. But a few weeks later, our lawyers joined, and they opened the little cabinets that we had, and they were full of beer. And these guys were like, and gals were like, hey, why do you have all this beer? And we were like, don't worry about it. It's cases versus bottles.
It's an awful lot of stress. And on Fridays, we all move into the room.
They also ask for treasury tags and pens and papers. And we're a digital transformation company. And the first 5 or 6 were engineers. So when the lawyers joined, we were like, why are there lawyers in office 1 and 2? What is a treasury tag? Do I need to Google that? So I've moved 4 offices now just within this country. It's been an interesting journey, and it's been a journey where you can see truly making a difference, because now the company employs hundreds of people. There's, you can see that it's making an impact. There are a whole bunch of folks that, since joining, they now have families, they have kids,
That's right.
they have I like the community building aspect. We do a lot of stuff as organization also in relation to volunteering and supporting it. That's one thing about Ireland. There's many things that might not work, but the sense of community in this country is the superpower of the country. I can go on and tell you about the weather, the tax system, and all these wonderful things. But the superpower is the community and the people. And you kind of adapt and adjust a bit, even if you come and you're a bit skeptical. And then suddenly you're like, wow, actually, the people are pretty good. Let's be honest.
Or you have actually become one of us.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well,
what nationality is your partner?
My wife is South Korean.
Okay,
and
so you've both had.
Yes, but she is becoming Irish actually. After I think I'm not familiar with the legislation, but I think after 5 years residing here, so she's gonna be Irish, and our kids also. So I actually will be married to an Irish woman and have Irish kids very soon.
So you will be part of the community.
I am part of the community.
Well, you're
I
already-
still hold to my non-Irish citizenship dearly, but she very much, she grew up in Seoul, which is a big city,
Oh yeah.
and where we live in a small, she calls it village, but in a suburb of Dublin, and she loves the community thing. And it's a good thing when a company comes. No surprise, there's what now, 200,000-300,000 and people employed by these global companies. So they're truly making a difference, and I hope they
I hope that
get
is
to stay
maintained.
here.
So do I. There's challenges around that type of stuff all around the world, but I have to really try and avoid political statements. I lost my concentration. That's what I get now for being a bit righteous. Sorry. When I remember when I went to, I've lived in Dublin most of my life. I lived in the UK for 8 years, in my previous career. But I remember when we went to the Dublin Chamber of Commerce. Now, I won't go too far on that one, but there's a Dublin Chamber of Commerce, and there's tiny little chambers all around, splattered all around Ireland. But I remember going to a conference that was being held, and this has to be about 8 or 9 years ago. It's definitely pre-COVID. And on the day, so the chairperson of the chamber stood up and said to the audience that 8 or 9 years ago, 19% of the residents of Dublin had not been born in Dublin.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I saw something from the National Statistic.
Now,
there was something not too long ago from the National Statistics Bureau that highlighted the fact that I think Dundee Raddown area was the area I was looking at, and it was 20% were not born.
Yeah.
I lived in Ireland in 2008, much darker times for this country, and
That's
much
right.
less, optimistic. Cuisine has changed also tremendously. No, look, like I said, it's the perception, but I think Ireland has been kind to us. Hopefully we've been kind to Ireland too, and we continue to do so. And the main thing is it still attracts talent. There's challenges with housing that we're seeing, but that's everyone else.
Oh, everywhere.
So there's those things, but I believe
Our tax base is too low, which is why we're paying too much tax, or the white-collar professionals.
Yeah, so there's number of things, but let's also be honest. Like the more internationals we bring here, I think there's going to be sooner rather than later we're going to see that healthy competition for talent build up again, because right now we're in a position where that might not be happening the way it was during COVID. And during COVID, companies overhired.
I agree.
We have to be intellectually honest there too.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of one of the learnings. Now, ServiceNow has been fortunate enough not to go through layoffs because we've been protecting the house. We haven't invested heavily in many things like Generative AI excluding from the picture because we're doing investments there. But we're always on the cautious side. And that was like absolutely top job by our finance folks to actually have that mindset not to go. So there have been many positive components there.
Yeah, no, I think you made a very good point, because I think that, to your point, a number of companies have, let people go after COVID, of course, because they were too optimistic, or simply not just gauging the level of needs that was around, and there are other companies like yours that personally I would call them companies with calculated bravery, so that you are brave because you innovate, but you are calculating, making sure that it still makes sense and it's still going to be, let's face it, profitable. And I think this sort of calculated bravery is very important, because it's the best way to avoid indeed layoffs. Like, unfortunately, it happened, in many companies.
the industry, yeah.
It's and I think that it's this is something that I was asking to a previous guest, but in this perspective of, let's say, 1 year or 2 years from now, since you are in this company that is innovating, that is brave, but with a calculated approach, what would you expect? Not the future, because that's a big word, but what would you expect the evolution for your team to be? I know it's difficult because things are moving very fast for the moment, but let's say in 1 year from now, let's not speak about 6 years from now. In 1 year, do you see that your team will expand even more because of AI, because you will bring more talent related directly to AI, or will you see more collaboration with other functions? What would be your wish, maybe, if you have a wish?
Wish probably a strong word, but I'll tell you what I'm predicting for my team specifically. As I mentioned earlier, my team deals with internationalization and accessibility engineering. We have the European Accessibility Act, which is a hugely important piece of legislation. I expect accessibility to be as important, if not even more important, for us at ServiceNow. I'll give you a bit of insider information there. Accessibility at ServiceNow has been a big rock, one of our major deliverables for 5 releases in a row. We've done tremendous work. We have a product owner, the VP level for accessibility also, so I'm on the engineering side. We have an Accessibility Center of Excellence. We've done a lot of work there, and we ought to do a lot more work there. AI, by the way, does have an impact on that because suddenly things like summarization, etc., they're super beneficial for low vision people. Instead of them reading the whole content, you now get AI to give you a quick summary. You also have some impressive technology improvements with screen readers, etc. So accessibility, I believe I'm going to see a lot of growth there. Where the rubber meets the road for the internationalization side of the business is how do I make sure that we as an organization think and deliver a solution in relation to customer configuration, customer customization, and customer needs for their own content generation. Because when you buy a platform like ServiceNow, you want to have an easy way to configure, localize, etc., your own content because you want to use it in a way that it makes sense to you. I want to figure out a way to bring a consumer-grade experience at an enterprise platform when it comes to self-localization and self-customization of multilingual content. That's my North Star.
Can I just ask a question that I'm going to show myself up here? Do you have a licensing part of your business? Or
elaborate more on that one.
Or do people just buy the whole platform?
No, it's licensing. It's based on different BUs, and then you can get 2 different type of licenses. So there's like the fulfiller. And
Okay, then I'm better.
It is a SaaS model, so it's licenses.
Sorry, I know I should know that, but I didn't. And then picturing then so to deliver what you're looking to deliver, I can picture then the different type of teams that are necessary to deliver what you're talking about.
So think about it. Like I'll give you an example. So let's say you are using ServiceNow for onboarding and offboarding. A lot of people do it. Integrates greatly with Workday. And you're a new employee. You start. Workday issues all your paperwork. You use DocuSign to sign your contract, and then that initiates a ticket in ServiceNow, and that ticket sends you the different steps that you need to now be doing for you to be onboarded. Oh, you want to request a computer, press here, follow the process. You want to request a badge, you want to get a phone. It's all through one simple portal. But now, that's out of the box. However, I am a South Korean company, and I really like to have my Samsung phone and my Samsung computer. So now I have to customize those labels and to put the definitions and to create a very hard process for somebody to request a Mac, because, I'm South Korean company, so I have to have a Samsung computer. You're starting now to generate content. You're starting to generate things. There might be cultural specifics, like you get onboarded in a big international company, but you're a German employee and you get a document that says 401k. Well, 401k doesn't mean anything to me. So that is the level. I want that experience to be consumer grade. And that's my North Star. Not about I don't care about out of the box. I think I do care about it, obviously, but I'm going to care less about it, and I'm going to care about customer generated. Those are the magic words for us, because that's where we have to move.
I'm actually comparing that to an experience I'm personally going through. So we obviously have people that work for us, and they're based around the world, and I'm the only person based here in Ireland. I have a number of outsourced suppliers that do my marketing and do my what has to do the accounting and bookkeeping, even though I don't do it myself. Disaster if I did it myself. It'd always go to the end of the queue. I prefer to make sure it's all done. But So I'm obviously now signing up, and I've discovered that the Irish banking system is not necessarily developed enough to facilitate some parts of the world, which is very, very bloody frustrating. It means that sometimes I have to be in the country to physically go into a bank to print off, and I'm there going, oh my God, this makes me feel young. Anyway, and of course I'm trying to use payment platforms. Oh my! And I'm actually experiencing the things that you're talking about. They're asking me questions that I'm not based in the States. Neither of the individuals at the moment that I'm trying to pay are based in the States. Sorry, I now understand better what you're talking about.
That's a perfect example right there.
So they're asking me questions about. So even the questions about my banking number, it actually makes reference to setups in the States. So I actually had to go back into the bank yet again yesterday and ask, can you just tell me what is our Irish version of this?
And think of at a corporate level where you have, again, 10,000 customers.
I know,
And they're some
I
of the
know.
biggest customers you have. At the end of the day, these customers don't want that to be a problem. They want that to
no.
go away. So our job is for that to go away. But for that to go away, whomever is the ServiceNow instance owner for that company has to build it in a way that it works, and it has to be easy. Because again, as engineers, we overcomplicate things, and we're like, but I wanted to do this and that. But the hardest thing is to make it easy. So that's where we need to focus on. That's my North Star. I think I want to see us developing a centralized solutions to manage localization on the ServiceNow platform, and outside of that
The
opens
truth is,
a
if
lot
I
of
had an
things.
option, I wouldn't be waiting. I don't have the personality to tolerate this carry on, but I can't find an option. I've tried a few, and like, oh my God, they're all now. I have no idea how to sort it out myself, but
Unfortunately, I can't give you any tips on that
no,
one.
it's just I can actually understand better what you were talking about. So, I mean, I think the thing now is for us to ask you if there's any questions we haven't addressed with you that you might like to tell us about, or tell the people that, like, we've 52,500 followers on LinkedIn. I know that's pretty teeny tiny compared to ServiceNow, but we've a reasonable sized audience, and you might like to share some stuff that you were hoping to get out, or tell about yourself, or if you're completely happy.
Listen, even if one person learns something about either ServiceNow or this conversation, that'll be great. Question I haven't heard. What are your predictions? What's going to happen in the industry for the next year or two? What's the North Star? What's the dream?
My concern is a little bit more around humanity, so it's probably not at all of interest to you.
We do have that concern, by the way. It's a shared concern at the moment. I think
because my concern is that trying to identify where any industry is going is too much control, is too much dictated by the people that are leading the charge, or people that are owning the charge. Because look, even in the last sort of 30 days, the people that are owning and leading the charge, how many industries, how many business owners, how many customers, how many clients are sitting at home at night panicking about how to change their model. So that's my concern about predicting. I don't know. That because I'm highly concerned. Now, the emotion around that will calm down.
I believe so, yes.
However, right now, it concerns me about who owns the charge and who's leading the charge. But Bruno's much more of an expert around this than I am.
I would say that just to anticipate, because I cannot predict really, but if I had to anticipate what's going to happen, I would hope, again, sort of wish that I could use a piece of advice that I got in 1994 when I started my career. And one of my managers told me that in business life, just like in life, everything is a balance. It has to be a balance between different things. And today, in my role or in my previous jobs as employee, but now as a consultant, independent, I see the people I'm working with are struggling with this balance. The balance between, and I could relate that to AI, of course, but even to more than AI, automation, other topics that are broader than just AI. I would say that I see many people struggling or facing the challenge of making this balance right between people, to your point. So let's talk about humans, processes, business operations, and technology ecosystems. Because it has to be a balance. It cannot be just everything for the tech ecosystems without humans and business processes. It cannot be just processes without humans and techs. So everything is a little, is more than a bit, actually. I shouldn't say a bit interwoven, but it's very much integrated. And I call it in my life, in my consultancy now, I call it operationalize AI. Operationalize is putting it into practice. You know, taking AI as a concept, as a game changer, as a technology, and making it happen in real life, business life, of course, and keeping the balance right in operationalizing it, between the impact on people, on processes, and on tech stack, and keeping that sort of balance. Well, first of all, to create that balance, because it needs to be created, and to maintain it. And I think that's what I would hope for the next years to come, is that we wouldn't make mistakes, or too many mistakes. We will make mistakes, but okay. Too many mistakes based on, or I would say because of a wrong approach of operationalization of AI or other concepts, automation and quantum computing that will come next, etc. Because I always remember this sentence: it has to be a balance, and everything that is too focused or that is not enough focused, for me, is a source of potential risk or potential danger or concerns. I try, and that's, of course, as a consultant, it's not an easy role to tell some clients and say, you are too much focused on this. You should keep the balance, or strike the balance, to make, to focus a little bit more on this. And, of course, for, talking to a CTO or CIO and tell that person that he's focusing too much on tech only, it's not an easy conversation. But okay. That's my role, and that was that's what I did in my previous jobs. So it's better to be honest, to be to have some sort of integrity, and say, this is what I believe is right. It has to be a balance, rather than say, oh yeah, try to keep running before you can even walk. Yeah. That is I would say that's what I hope, that there is a balance. But to your point, Paul, I think it's not going to be a big challenge, because humans can be in the loop. For me, humans are in the center, not in the loop, but that's a different debate. But I think that when I'm listening to some people, or when I'm in meetings to try to convince that AI-driven operations are not just about tech, I think there might be a risk of focusing too much on one of the components and not keeping the balance right. That would be my sort of hope, and not just professionally, because that's something which is my daily bread, but I would say it's probably the best way to create value with things like AI, with everything, actually. If you don't integrate the three components, so humans, processes, and tech stacks, or tech ecosystems, there is a risk that something might just be off track.
The thing that I would throw another P into that is profitability.
Of course.
Because it's key.
It is.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It is, of course.
Yeah, it is. That's part of the SMART acronym I was using.
Yeah,
if you're not specific, measurable, etc., most of the time.
But sometimes it's actually very difficult to be the profitable part of that, if you're over focused on one of any of the ones you've mentioned. So it's constant juggling act, and you really have to be.
And you have to take a step back sometimes.
Yeah, and you have to be adaptable. You actually have to, if you don't know how to do it yourself, you have to be willing to reach out and go, God, okay, I need to find somebody.
But one of the things that I found very interesting is again, those like fractional consultant, fractional C-level. I was super impressed with that concept. Like, I'm sure it's been around a long time. It's just something that I got exposed to recently.
They just use a different word for it nowadays.
And it was, oh my gosh, like it totally makes sense. So I see this kind of, that specific, and maybe that gives you that balance of like getting, not over rotating on a specific thing, but skills are changing, work is changing. There's some big bets on how things would change. I think in a nutshell, if you're customer-centric, customer-obsessed, you will do okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with that. Oh yeah, definitely. And I would say
Yeah.
the balance
Yeah.
is even, from my perspective at least, it's even at a very high level, at the very strategic level, when we talk about, of course, again, let's take the example of generative AI. Again, most articles, most conversations are focused on implementing AI, adopting AI in organizations. That's great. It needs to be. It needs to be discussed. But again, for me, the balance is not right, because what about the readiness? What about the awareness that you need to create first to make sure that your implementation and your adoption discussion is going to be realistic? Because I was working last year with a company, small company, biotech company, and they were super excited by generative AI, as you can imagine. Yeah, we're going to create our content, not just translate, but create it from scratch in multiple languages. So not even localize it, but create in multiple languages. And they were super excited. And then after 10 minutes of selfish speaking, I asked the CTO of that company, so you mean that you are ready with your data management? You are ready with the readiness of your organization to move to implementation? And he said, yeah, we had a few conversations. That sounds quite bizarre, because I said it means that probably there is not enough awareness and there is not enough readiness in your organization. So it's great to be excited about implementing. But again, I use this sentence all the time. Try to learn to walk before starting running. If you cannot run, if you cannot walk first. And that's the balance that I see at a very, very high level, certainly C level or D level, where people are sometimes, not all, not everyone, they are focused, obsessed, I should say, by one thing, which is implementing or adopting, just because it's part of their function. A CTO is there to implement, right? And I have to tell them, make a step back, to use your point, make a step back and look at what you do, but in a bigger framework. If you think, because you are the CTO, you are the CIO, you are indeed responsible for implementation and adoption, but do you think that you will really be successful if you and your organization are not ready to move to those implementation and adoption steps? Because otherwise, and it goes back to humans, if people are not aware of what AI is and what it is not, because some people may make some dreams about AI and they watch this movie with Will Smith, I, Robot. Many times they say, oh yeah, AI, oh, it's about robots. And so you have to tell people what it is and what it's not, and then make your organization ready, with people, with training, with workshops, and also data. Look at your data strategy if you are going to be able to not just to have to think about a great model, but to train it properly with the right data, and make again the whole organization ready. If you have not completed those steps, then if you are so obsessed by implementation that you think that for me, implementation is like running. First there is walking. Walking is awareness and readiness, and that's why for me the balance is not just operational. It is very strategic. Even before talking about what needs to be done, for me it needs to be the framework, or the 4 steps needs to be really well defined, which is awareness, readiness, effectiveness, as I call it. And then in each of these areas, then you can define the actions and the indicators to measure success. But first, let's start the balance. Let's keep the balance at the very high level, and then let's dive into it to see what needs to be done or what should be done. And let's do it. Let's walk. And once we are comfortable walking, let's start running. But unfortunately, sometimes I'm a bit puzzled by some even some articles or some conversations that are all about hype and excitement. You need to be excited, of course, to do your job properly. You need to have some incentive and to be
Excitement.
to be really driven by what you do, just like you are in your company. But of course, being driven or being excited has to go together with being realistic and being ready for it. I think that going too fast is not good. Going too slow is not good either. And again, it's a balance between those two things. And I would hope that, of course, this sort of challenge of I would say operationalizing AI or generative AI is going to be a bigger topic on the table, and also based on the balance of what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done. Because the beauty of working with life sciences companies is that in those companies, it's not just because they are regulated industries, but in those companies, they are very sort of direct and very straightforward about what needs to be, what the value that needs to be created. And they tell, if AI doesn't create any value, we're not going to move to it. Just like some pharmaceutical companies still use today NMT and not LLMs to translate and localize. Why? Because they tested it and they realized that big LLMs were not creating the value. So why spend millions on implementing LLMs for translation localization? Let's keep using, for the moment, let's keep using NMT. And let's start. That's what I see as well. Let's start developing our own SLMs. It's going to be less expensive. It's going to be more focused on our industry. If you develop, devices for heart, for instance, cardiology, this is very specific. With big models, no chance that it's going to cut it. But so I think the balance is my North Star, as you said. But of course, yeah, it has to be well shared with other people. That's the problem.
I think some of the greatest leaders I've seen out there have had this almost unhuman ability to pilot stuff, and they have this knowledge at which point the pilot doesn't work. They have almost that like muscle memory of being like, oh, this is going to go bad. Stop, regroup, fix it. A lot of people sometimes go a bit too far. And it's been interesting because you can tell people that have authority, knowledge, experience, they have this sixth sense that they are like, let's be intellectually honest again, and let's stop this and reposition it. And it's a great example with the large language models, etc., for some specific verticals where the data is not there. But keep in mind, the generative AI concept is not localization, it's generation of content, which is, again, very different. I still wonder, like, for example, marketing localization. Shouldn't it be more generative? There's many areas, but what I am kind of now starting to think is specific to the localization profiles or options or things. I think there's passengers for every train. I think because we created a lot of content also over the last few years. So I think that diversity of offering is very important because people ought to buy whatever they're comfortable with. The measurements, that's a different story. Like, what do you measure? What is the measurement of good, bad, and ugly? That's a very long topic.
Yeah, it also varies from season to season, and it varies from what the main people behind an organization need in any given moment, and that varies from time to time.
Yeah. There's a lot of variables.
It's not a fixed picture.
And it's not always a matter of money at the end of the day, because I received that sort of argument when I'm sort of trying to strike the balance right again. I said, "Oh, Bruno, we don't have the money to do what you are advising us to do." And I said, "Look at what you are spending today. Look at your spend. If you spend, like, I don't know, I take a number, very trivial, 3 million. Look at, what is it really necessary to spend your 3 million on an LLM? Just keep money for your SLM and move some of that money to do a better data strategy that's going to not only that's going to improve your SLM, but that's going to hurt your budget, because your budget, you still have the same amount of money. It's like connected vessels. You take a little bit of that is not super useful, and you dedicate it to something that will really improve. And that's the problem. That's the challenge, I would say. It's, naturally, I think human nature is focusing too much by default on what is downstream. The output, what is delivered. it's more difficult for humans to focus on what is down upstream. Upstream being, as I said before, readiness. But for instance, spending more on something that's going to improve the rest of the flow, the rest of the workflow, and of course, moving some of the money or some of the time as well, some of the resources that are dedicated to something that is maybe that has 5 out of 10 in the scale of importance, and actually move it to something that has to be done upstream that is 8 out of 10 in terms of importance.
But that's
connected vessels.
Yeah, but that's actually, I'm not saying it's easy, but that's business modeling transitioning 101.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're talking about is if you actually don't have the understanding that that's needed and that should be under review at least once a year, if you're only doing it once a year, I can't afford to only do it once a year. Now, I have a small company, obviously, so I'm not talking about having to, again, turn a huge tanker, but that's business modeling transitioning 101, Bruno.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. I know it's not easy.
It's not easy, but it's sometimes human nature is difficult to
I know
work
that,
with.
I know.
But it's more like, yes, going back to value creation with an LLM, if it's not absolutely necessary, there is no pride of using an LLM just because you can tell everyone, oh, I'm using an LLM. It has to be doing something right for you. And if you are using an SLM that is more effective for you, you can be as proud of saying, oh yeah, I'm using an SLM, rather than say I'm using an LLM. I think
it comes down to setting up goals and making sure you're measuring stuff, being open to adjustment. But it also, you have to have the willingness and sometimes knowledge to take that step back and to reprioritize, because as humans, sometimes we take stuff personal. We're like, oh, I thought that was the best idea ever, and I'm going to push a bit more.
I know.
So that's what I said earlier, like
That's
by
true.
the whole point. I've seen some leaders, amazing leaders, where they basically have this thing where they are like, okay, this might be not a battle lost, but most likely a battle lost. So let me refocus. Because one of the things I learned very early on is we do OKRs. And I do lists and I do additional OKRs and I have must follow-ups and all this and that. And I'm horrible at it. That's the one thing I'm horrible. Last year I started with 26 things and I was like, these are my must-haves. I'm going to get that list to 3. I finished with 40. So basically those drivers and OKRs, humans' intellectual capacity should be like 2-3 things. Let's do them super well, take pride of it. But modern business nowadays there's so many bits and bobs that you ought to be able to do it. And sometimes prioritization comes at other costs. But
I know that.
But one of the things you're exactly right is sometimes just having the guts to do it, to say no, to like, hey.
I know. I remember I was part of a business group with my own personal development and training. I was a member of this group for years, and I remember they brought in they used to bring in, all of us, you had to be a business owner, your business had to be turning over a certain minimum amount and up to a maximum amount, so that we all had roughly the same type of issues. But I remember this chap came in, they were gurus in particular areas, and this time this man actually said to us all, so okay, you're now visualize that you're out on a raft out at sea. Something's happened. You fell off a boat and you magically ended up on a raft out at sea. But you need your business has to survive because it's going to feed your family and hopefully you'll get back alive. All that stuff. What is the one question you ask the person that's running it while you're falling off a boat out at sea? One question. You should have seen us focus. All of us. We all went. The first thing, is there enough money in the bank, or did that client sign, or whatever it was. Every one of us had to boil it down to one question. It was a great discipline. It was a very interesting exercise.
Sounds super interesting.
I better actually. I'm just conscious of your time and conscious of our time.
I have almost no time.
I do appreciate it very much.
No, thank you. This was very interesting.